Now, one of the most damaging aspects of addiction is its ability to, erode your ability to experience pleasure. This is something known as anhedonia. Anhedonia basically means that you feel this permanent emotional flatness in response to everything in life. Nothing really arouses in you excitement. Sometimes nothing really arouses in you pain. You kind of just feel like a zombie walking around with a memory of pleasure, a memory of feeling good, but that memory is, of course, is in the past. And your present experience is one of just this deep existential voidness. At least that's how reality felt to me when, after I started to get off drugs, even when I was on drugs, um, when I was addicted, when the high had worn down, I would experience this really profound anhedonia. And that feeling of emptiness would motivate me to try and find more drugs, obviously. You can watch some of my other videos if you want to know the particular substances I was addicted to. There were quite a few in my life. But coming back, that feeling of emptiness was extreme, really, because quite frankly, my body was almost completely depleted of many of the feel-good neurochemicals that we need in order to feel excitement and peace and warmth and happiness. Dopamine, serotonin, norepinephrine, which is a sort of an alertness chemical in our brain. I remember after drug binges, in particular, the one I used to binge a lot was known as MCAT or 4-MMC, which is a kind of, people know it in the UK sort of drug scene. It's a mix of MDMA and cocaine, people used to describe it as. And I used to remember the feeling of waking up the morning after binging and my joints would feel so stiff, my bones were cracky, my body just felt so fatigued and shitty. And there was this sort of general anxiety for no particular reason that I feel waking up. And my head would hurt. I would have this sort of chronic migraine in my head. And that's how I would feel like, I'd try and walk it off. But, at the time I was binging so much that I come to this sort of reluctant acceptance that when I'm off the drugs, I'm just going to be depressed. And the only solution to my depression at that time was to just binge again, And yeah, that's a situation the addict is sort of put in when they're in the spiral of addiction. The only way to feel immediate pleasure is to resort to the addiction. But you know that the more you resort to the addiction, the more it is pulling you down deeper and deeper and deeper. And the hole that you're going to have to climb out of eventually, it's just going to be an even deeper hole the more you trap yourself in the illusion of the addiction, the illusion of sort of feeling that high and being so absorbed in that high, and then it sort of falls away. You're being let down from heaven, and then you're in the pits of hell, the underworld, where everything is shit. And you have two choices ultimately: to thug it out for as long as it takes for your neurochemistry to rebalance itself, which in my case, it took weeks, if not months, to rebalance itself because my binges were very profound. And even now, after a year and a half, perhaps, I can't remember the exact date, maybe even 2 years, there are still lingering effects. I did do damage to my heart, my circulatory system, mild damage, but a lot of it healed. And your body does have a powerful ability to replenish itself. But in particular, the anhedonia, the lack of pleasure from life, was perhaps the most challenging one. It's funny. When I was in the pits of the addiction, I used to anytime I ever would socialize, I would use a drug because the drug made me very talkative. Naturally, I'm a very introverted person. And I found in the early stage of the addiction, when I was high, I'd have very positive, rewarding social interaction because I had the confidence to speak. Usually, I don't have any real motivation to talk to people, but this sort of drug, the high, sort of brought it out of me. And so I would be caught in this bit of a pickle, I suppose, because most people who knew me when I was at university, they knew the high version of me. They knew the eccentric, extroverted, very talkative, energetic version of me who was, at the time just railing line after line of the MCAT, to keep it going. And obviously their expectation was of me in that high state. So when they met me in my more sober state, they're like, it's like speaking to a different person, because my sober state was just very bored of living, not in a suicidal way. I never did grow suicidal, fortunately, but I did understand why people find life unbearable, because that's what my life was like. When I was coming down off the drugs, it was just boring. Everything was boring. And trying to think what really got me through it, what got me through it first and foremost was patience, really. Having the patience to sit with a present reality, which is pretty shit, but knowing there was a part of me that knew that with time, things will get better. And I remember, after I finished up with uni and I came back home, and that was when the recovery sort of really kicked into gear. I found myself just my body was very weak at the time. I spoke about this many in the past. I did have a number of different panic attacks and health symptoms, and my body was very, very weak because of the amount of binges I was doing. And so the immediate state path of my recovery was resting, and really seriously resting. My heart felt so weird. I couldn't really walk or run or exercise much. So I had to take a long rest from all kinds of physical activity. And that's very humbling to experience, as I think I was 22 at the time, 21, 22. And it's very humbling at that age to really be confronted with the fragility of your body, how fragile it is, and how you've got to take care of it. So my initial stage of recovery was doing little things to just take care of my body, eating certain food. I was very, very strict with the food I was eating. When my body was very weak, it made me very hypersensitive in terms of to the food that I eat. So, I was unable to stomach, processed food or any nonsense like that. It was very much just basic vegetables, fruit, eggs and stuff to really sort of nourish the cells again. And I remember as well, I would go for these little walks in nature and just a lot of stillness. In fact, I remember recording a lot of videos when I was first recovering from drugs, because that became a healthy distraction. A healthy way of really processing everything that I've gone through. I did make some videos about addiction back then, which is almost like me entering into a sort of a therapy session with the camera, where I'm just sort of verbalizing all my experiences. And it's a deep catharsis that comes when you really speak about your feelings. And I've said once about the importance of journaling down your feelings when you're healing any sort of problem. Just putting it on the page, and it means you're entering into this dialogue with your subconscious. And I always find it feels very liberating, very informative, and very interesting, very interesting to enter that sort of conversation with yourself. And so I remember that first stage of the addiction, I was quietly nourishing myself. I was putting myself into productive pursuits, all the sort of stuff that I neglected when the drugs were consuming my life. when the drugs sort of let go and I have this freedom or sovereignty to sort of direct my energy, I was being very consistent, very disciplined with having good, healthy habits. Yes, I was still depressed at the time, but I knew that if I stay consistent with these sort of rituals, these rituals of every morning, waking up, maybe doing some stretching, doing some yoga, going out for a walk in nature, getting some sunlight, making sure that, I'm nourishing myself with good food and stuff like that. I'm resting, allowing time to really sit in silence and stillness. When you do these sort of nourishing things, you do nourish yourself. And I look at myself now, I'm in a radically different place I was even in that short period of a time. And what that goes to show me is that no matter how shit it gets, everything in life changes. And some changes take time. Some changes can happen quick. Like, your life can change in just a few months or a week or a year, a lot can change. So to any of you who are in the moment, at the moment, suffering with addiction, I want you to understand that, you're not alone. It feels like you're alone, but you're not. Many people have been in your shoes, and many people have also gotten out of your situation, and you're no different to them. And it's really our own limiting beliefs, our own belief that, I have no choice but to relapse, or that I can't heal. These beliefs that we have, they're the first most important blocks that we need to eradicate from our life. If you want to heal, you have to first believe in your capacity to heal. And you have to believe as well that even if you slip up, that is okay, because the slip up is part of the healing journey. Pretty much everyone suffering from addiction, right? In their recovery, there's always one or two or many relapses. It was the case in my life. But the important thing I knew, because it's funny, like even going into addiction, I was still I'd read so much about addiction even before I got very, very addicted. So that goes to show that, like, even if you have all the knowledge, all the facts, it doesn't stop it from happening. But the good thing is that with the knowledge and the fact that I did know what to do to get out of it, so I guess my knowledge wasn't preventative, but it did help me in the recovery, in the rehabilitation period, which I did myself. I didn't go to any of those rehab centers, all that, stuff. I dealt with it myself, and that's not something that I encourage for all of you people. It's something that I did in my own life. There was an option of going to therapy and something like that, but I didn't choose it for some reason. I don't know, maybe there's something there, but I wanted to grapple with it myself, really, to heal myself. And that's all a therapist does. A therapist does, really. A therapist doesn't heal you. What a therapist should do is bring out your own innate capacity to heal yourself, to understand your problems, to understand the solutions. They equipped you with that. And I guess I just wanted to cut out the middleman and just do it myself, And all these videos that I make, they are expressions of my own healing journey. I heal myself through these videos, and hopefully it helps you guys, people listening. So I'm going to sign off there. Hope it's been good. Hope it's been insightful, and enjoy the rest of your day, everyone, and adios.